Part 191. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1906. Even if Gretel had all kinds of means and countless magics, he could not do anything to his relatives. Uncle Karen and Aunt Eileen were determined and did not want to move away from Heartland City, and Gretel had no way to force them to move. Besides, based on past life experiences, it may not be a good thing for the elderly to move away from their familiar and comfortable areas. Even though material conditions have improved, there are no relatives around or old friends to talk to. In fact, the street scenes I see are no longer familiar, the climate, water and soil of the place where I live are unfamiliar, and I can't eat familiar and delicious dishes. For them, it means that the quality of life is reduced. It means that life in their later years is no longer so satisfactory, and it means that their lifespan is shortened. Gretel didn't want that. Therefore, he could only build a house with turning mud into stone on Uncle Karen's farm and live in it. Just deal with it for a while. Anyway, when it's time to take a break, just open the mage's mansion. Then, each person is given a portion of the magic berry technique every day to help the elderly maintain their health. Once a day, treat Uncle Karen's various diseases, blood vessels, heart, liver, gallbladder. After all the treatments, Uncle Karen's complexion improved and all indicators became normal. As for Aunt Eileen, the information Gret checked also came back with feedback. Rebirth of fallen teeth is not a difficult task in the healing arts. It only requires a small skill. With this skill as a foundation, Gretel successfully regenerated Aunt Eileen's teeth and persuaded her to increase her dietary intake. Drink milk every day. More than 300 grams, preferably more than 500 grams. Look, it's this cup. I just finished it by hand. It has a scale on it. It must reach at least the third line, and preferably it can pass the fifth line. Eat at least one egg every day. If you want to eat fish, if you want to eat meat, pork, beef, mutton, fish, and shrimp will come in turn. Seeing Gret accompanying her with a smile, begging her to eat this and that, Aunt Eileen couldn't bear to offend him. If she wants to save good things for her children, Gretel can always touch them and take out an identical one. Aunt Eileen, you can eat it? I still have some here for the children. After half a month of supplementation, the effect is really good. At least, Aunt Eileen's face was much rosier and she was walking more briskly, so she wouldn't be out of breath after walking for a while and had to stop and take a rest. Hypoglycemia improved and hypotension improved slightly. Of course, muscle atrophy and osteoporosis have not improved so quickly, but the body's reserves have at least reached a higher level. There is a saying that the magic berry technique is indeed gentle and effective in recuperating the body, promoting appetite, and making up for losses. After half a month, in Gretel's eyes, Aunt Eileen had recovered enough to withstand the surgery. In other words, it can withstand the treatment of organ regeneration technique. The heart, nodules in the lungs, bone hyperplasia in the knees and ankles, and bunion valgus can all be treated bit by bit. Gret also started little by little. The lungs were treated on the first day, the heart on the second day, and on the third, fourth, and fifth days, bit by bit, those parts of Aunt Eileen's body that could be called diseases were cured. The only things that don't have immediate results and need to be nursed back to health slowly are malnutrition, muscle atrophy, and osteoporosis. At this point, Gretel has done his best. He set up a magic circle at Uncle Karen's manor, transplanted a magic plant, and asked the local nature order to take care of it. Natural priests can understand the flowering and fruiting of the magic plant, the cycle of winter and summer, and can use the branches, leaves and fruits of the magic plant. The price is that after he leaves, they will provide 2 old people with a magic berry produced by the magic berry technique every day. He used the basics of alchemy to make a set of steel mills specifically for grinding flour for the manor. From then on, the two old men no longer had to eat the black bread mixed with stones, sawdust, stone powder falling from the stone mill, and so on. By the way, buy another 100 acres of land for the manor to raise 2 cows, goats, chickens, ducks, pigs, etc. to ensure that there is fresh milk, goat milk, and fresh meat to eat every day. To this day, this amount of money is already a drop in the bucket to him, and he doesn't even need to worry about it at all. However, even though Gretel is a 19th level nature priest and a 19th level magician, Gretel is loved by nature and loved by the world. There are things he cannot do. Even if he tried his best to help the two old people heal all the illnesses they could, Gretel still had problems that he couldn't solve. Unable to solve, unavoidable, and have to face. Senescence. No matter how well conditioned your body is, it cannot resist the passage of time. No matter how much you heal them, no matter how much you try to make them feel better, what is supposed to come will still come. The body's reactions will slow down, appetite will decrease, organs will weaken, and bones and muscles will decline. Step by step, towards the end. As for giving them the organ regeneration technique just developed by Gretel, do not make jokes. Any spell requires energy. A magician or high-level warrior who is not of sufficient level will never be able to cast high-level spells, the body's carrying capacity is not enough. Even the lowest level of feather falling technique, if you want it to be permanent on your body, you must be at least level 3 or 5. As a 19th level mage, Gretel had to deal with such a spell. This burden was like a joke to him. However, 2 ordinary people, 2 elderly people, 2 old people who are already frail. Constant spell like this? Without energy, their life force is drained. If this spell is activated a few times, a good living person will be beaten to death. Uncle Karen, Aunt Eileen. Greet sat among them, holding the 2 old men in each hand, with a troubled expression on his face. When he came back this time, although he had tried his best to cure their diseases, he could only make them feel better and could not delay their aging. Next time, next time, next time, come back next time. One day, when he returns to this small town, these 2 old men who watched him grow up, these 2 old men who took care of young Greet, will no longer be alive. What's the matter? Do you want us to come with you? Little Greet, Uncle, thank you very much, but there's really no need. None of Edward and David's children, including little Avril's, had any great qualifications. They can live well in Heartland City, but if they go to Nevis, it will be too hard. No. Greet shook his head vigorously. At that moment, he even had a rebellious thought. Do you want to keep them, stay for a long time, stay in this world? Maybe I can do it. Maybe, I can really do it. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1907. Chapter 1902 Gretel /U00260 Cyrilla, was the marriage forced to give birth? Gretel stared into the old man's smiling eyes and moved his lips. Immortality, immortality, such words came to my lips several times, but they never came out. He can't do this. Even if it's for the benefit of the elderly. In other words, it was really for the sake of the old man that he couldn't do this. Immortality and immortality, this state can only be enjoyed by those who work hard and advance to the level of legend, or by natural immortal species. If everyone else enjoys eternal life, that kind of eternal life is often a curse. If there is no matching xinxing, if there is no matching strength, just living for a long time. Seeing myself getting older and failing bit by bit, but unable to die. Or, even if you can keep your body alive, watch your loved ones leave one by one, watch the world become a little stranger, you will still be the same. Not everyone can bear this kind of loneliness. That's it for long-lived species. It's not that easy for short-lived species to adapt to long lifespans. He cannot be selfish. Just because you want to keep your loved ones, you cannot change their life trajectory and increase their pain. At this moment, he could only smile slightly and lean towards the old man beside him affectionately. And Eileen, you have to eat well and eat meat well. Don't be reluctant to eat it. Next time I come over, I want to see that your arms are thicker and your calves are also thicker. You have gained at least 10 pounds. 10 pounds. Okay, okay. The old woman smiled and narrowed her eyes, with wrinkles on her face blooming one by one. She patted Greet's hand gently as if coaxing a child. Auntie must eat well, sleep well, work less, and not make herself hard. Let our little Gretel come over next time to see that Auntie is well. Gretel heaved a sigh of relief, but also felt a little sad. And Eileen did not let him go, but slapped him hard. Speaking of which, when are you going to get married? This little girl has been with you for so many years. It's hard not to explain to others, get married early and have children early, and aunt can help you take care of the children. This. Gretel sweated. Gretel panicked. Gretel was attacked unexpectedly. Gretel broke the defense. And Eileen, this, that, we are not in a hurry, we have agreed to wait until legend. Why aren't you in a hurry? Just because you're not in a hurry doesn't mean that this little girl isn't in a hurry, and Eileen glared hard at Gretel, then leaned over and smiled reassuringly at Cyrilla. Boys are like this. If you don't push him, he will never remember it. He is such a good girl like you, but he can bear to drag you like this, dragging you for decades. Don't feel wronged. And talk to him. Cyrilla. To be honest, as a silver dragon, her concept of time is really different from that of humans. In terms of age, she has just touched the edge of adult dragon. It is really too early to get married and have children. Very. Getting married, holding a wedding is a lot of fun and interesting. You can also receive many, many, many gifts. But having a baby? That's really not necessary. It will be a little later, and a little later, and a little later. Even her mother secretly told her. Put it off as far as possible, until after you are legendary. Giving birth to a child will delay things, especially a female dragon. Most of the energy needed to give birth to a child comes from the female dragon. Anyway, that boy Gretel has helped so many legendary dragons have children. When you become legends, you won't be afraid of not being able to give birth. But you should take advantage of your youth, vigor, and energy to become a legend. Only when you become a legend can it last forever. And after giving birth to a child, she still has to take care of the child. She, Cyrilla, is still a little princess herself. She doesn't know how to take care of children. She doesn't want to take care of the child. No matter what, I have to wait until Greet has 3, 4, 5, or 6 disciples and someone to help him before he can have a baby. Or, well, just find a way to get older brothers and sisters to come over. But my brother and sister are not married yet, and they don't have children yet, and they won't take them. Cyrilla's mind kept having one thought and another. But the smile on his face was gentle and gentle, even a little bit coquettish. This is the person who watched Gretel grow up, this is the person who took care of Gretel when he was a child, this is the person Gretel respects and is close to like a mother. Anyway, she won't be able to stay here for long, so let her be happy. And Eileen. She called Greet. I'm really not in a hurry. According to the age of our race, I've just come of age. I'm not in a hurry to get married, let alone have children. I have to work hard to advance to legend. Only then can I be with Gretel for a long time. And Eileen. Although little Greet had heard her say in private that this girl was not a human being, but a silver dragon, the statement that she had just become an adult after decades still made her a little dizzy. She took a deep breath, looked at Gretel, and then at the silver-haired girl in front of her who was smiling softly, and tried her best to make herself laugh. It's good to be together for a long time. Only after a long time can we accompany each other forever. Little Gretel had a hard time when he was a child and had no relatives around him. You have to stay with him well. Her eyes were blank, as if she had seen herself and her husband pass away, and the relatives around Gretel were getting older, with only Cyrilla by his side. It is said that if you become a legend, you will be able to live forever and ever. If you don't have your loved ones by your side for such a long life, it would be so lonely. Gretel tried to smile at her, tried to comfort her, and tried to be coquettish. It wasn't until the two elderly people were put to sleep that he and Cyrilla walked back to their own residence, then looked back at the darkened house and let out a long sigh. Don't you see, the bright mirror in the high hall has sad white hair, and it looks like blue silk in the morning and turns to snow in the evening. Cyrilla, you know, for a moment, I really wanted to study a topic: how can an ordinary person obtain eternal life, or at least, unlock the mystery of eternal life? Then do some research, Cyrilla encouraged him as a matter of course. Greet can study whatever he wants to study. It will definitely work. But no. Letting ordinary people gain eternal life is not good for them, nor is it good for the world. Gretel's eyes were full of sorrow, as if he had seen the two old people pass away and he lost two relatives forever. Although he felt sad, he still shook his head firmly. We still have to think of new research directions. Alas, there is no inspiration at all. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1908. Greet stayed in Heartland City for a full month before setting off north to return to Nevis. During this period, he carefully reconditioned the bodies of Uncle Karen and Aunt Eileen. We did detailed examinations for everyone in Uncle Karen's family, including Brother Raymond, Edward, David, Little Avril, and their families. Some diseases, big and small, were cured if possible. Sitting in the medical clinic, giving lectures to the healers, treating the uncles and uncles I met in the city guard and their families, and conducting free clinics for the poor in Heartland City. Of course, it is inevitable to give a few lectures to the local mage tower, exchange plant cultivation and local crop growth with the priests of the nature order, exchange battlefield first aid and sports rehabilitation with the god of war priests, and the spring water temple. There's really nothing to communicate with the spring water temple, and you can't communicate about the establishment and maintenance of the city's water supply system, right? In addition, local lords asked for an audience, other lords in the county asked for an audience, various nobles from nearby and far away came to establish relations. Sorry, I'm not available, I'm not in the mood, I don't want to see you. Today, he has enough status to reject almost all nobles. A level 19 archmage, half a legend. Unless he is a legend, no one can meet him if they want to. By the way, you'd better not think about harassing my family, friends, or acquaintances. If I find out, they'll be blacklisted. As for those who are waiting for his treatment, those who are waiting for him to update the cardiovascular system, those who are waiting for him to treat other organs, and even those who are waiting for him to give new research directions. Gretel only asked, "Is the person dying? If he's about to die, I didn't say that he should be carried here quickly. If he can't move anymore, he should give him some directions and I'll rush over. If it is just a chronic disease, just wait. Why is your illness a disease, but the illness of the local civilians in Heartland City is not a disease? Besides, doctors also need to take vacation. Even the president of the country needs to take a vacation. Of course, there is a war here, a major natural disaster, a major casualty accident, and there is still playing golf on vacation at a certain manner. This is a bit excessive." In short, Gretel had a good time and stayed in Heartland City for a full month before slowly heading back. Apart from Heartland City, there is no place in this country that he particularly misses or wants to visit, including the royal capital. Although there is a maternal and infant hospital he established there, he has not been in charge of this hospital for decades. It is estimated that the people in it have changed several times. Recently, there has been no special progress in the field of obstetrics and gynecology. My disciples have already taught them the rescue instructions for amniotic fluid embolism. As for the Queen, it was nothing more than an ordinary patient. Once the task was completed, it was done. There was nothing to talk about. Are you talking about politics? He has left all matters related to politics to the review committee. You guys can evaluate them and just let me know when you are done. Let's go back to Nevis. Greet swayed, and Cyrilla rode on Appa's back, swaying back to Nevis. As soon as I returned to the Mage Tower, a lot of things immediately hit my face. Master Nordmark, there are recently patients from the Duke of Warwick, the Earl of Berwick, the Earl of Clare, who are waiting for your treatment. The examinations have been completed. You have been out for a month, can you treat a few more treatments a day, individual? Master Nordmark, the journal Life has recently received many manuscripts and is urgently awaiting your review. Master Nordmark, Bridge Magic Academy invites you to give lectures if you have time. Master Nordmark, the annual meeting of the journal Medical Research would like to invite you to speak. The Archmage Nordmark. Gretel, I don't want to work, I don't want to read reports, I don't want to review manuscripts, I don't want to give lectures. Why does the happy vacation end so quickly and I have to go back to work again? Anavia and Leon Carlo stood on either side of the teacher with a straight face. Seeing his face full of pain, they wanted to hold their heads and roll around on the spot, so they had to look at each other and pretend they didn't see anything. When a teacher receives patients in the hospital, he is full of energy. He can work from 7 in the morning to 10 in the evening, sipping water and stuffing 2 pieces of pancake in a hurry without even saying he is tired. However, when all these messy chores are piled up in front of you, the teacher looks reluctant. It's impossible to treat more than one person a day, absolutely impossible. Gretel had enough of fussing and began to reply slowly one by one. Tell the review committee, 1 treatment a day, never more than once. After saying this, his voice became softer and he murmured to himself. If I can treat 2 patients a day just to keep up with the progress, they will know my ability to treat 2 patients a day, then they will treat me with 2 patients a day. No. Absolutely not. Leon Carlos tried hard to keep a straight face and resisted laughing. Anavia already laughed. I know, teacher. Then we will respond to the review meeting. Teacher has many things to do and can't spare much time. He can only treat 1 treatment a day. Well, the work in the hospital and the work of teaching healers is also very arduous. After the teacher has trained 3 or 5 healers, these patients can now be triaged. If that doesn't work, can't they still find the Grand Duke of the vampire race? Please sort out the manuscripts submitted to the journal Life, attach the review comments of the previous reviewers, and send them to me. I will read them as soon as possible. The Magic Academy doesn't have time, so one of you can talk about it. It's up to you to recruit people. The annual meeting of medical research? We usually meet a lot of those people. As for going there in particular, Gretel mumbled, giving full play to the characteristics of social fear and kicked away most of the invitations. In the end, there was only one matter that required his personal decision. The royal family's research request. They are willing to bear the research costs and would like to ask you to take the lead in researching issues related to increasing agricultural production. What are you doing with me for this matter? Gretel blurted out, go to the natural god called on his lips, and he swallowed it back. Leon Carlos pretended not to hear anything. Anavia looked sideways, raised one eyebrow high, and glanced sideways at Gretel. Teacher, have you forgotten that you are also a priest from the Church of Nature? Isn't it true that I am also looking for the natural God cult when I'm looking for you? Ah, oh. Under the contempt of his disciple, Gretel finally corrected his attitude and changed his face. Increasing agricultural production is indeed the basis for social development. This research work has been done by the Nature Order, right? Let's go back and sort out their progress and current research plans, and let me see if there is anything I can do to help. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1909. The Nature Order, generations of nature priests, have been doing work in the direction of increasing agricultural production. Some are engaged in breeding improved seeds, some are improving planting methods, some are making compost, some are doing soil and water conservation, some are doing insecticide and weeding. The high-ranking priests studied hard, and the low-ranking priests traveled to the fields and taught the farmers step by step how to farm. Of course, their work has made tremendous progress in recent years. Thanks to the need to reserve food in the year without summer, the Magic Council invented a method of producing nitrogen fertilizer from air, and nitrogen fertilizer was in sufficient supply. In addition, the Parliament's ships regularly hauled struvite back from overseas, and the Parliament's factories regularly used the bitter brine left over from salt production to make potash fertilizer. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizers are well mixed and sold at a price that is not too low but allows farmers to make some profits and save more grain. The job of the natural priests is to cooperate with the magicians to study the usage and dosage of these fertilizers. What crop, what period, seedling stage, growth stage, budding stage, flowering stage, filling stage, maturity stage. What fertilizer should be used at which stage, how much, how to mix artificial fertilizer and farm compost, the depth of fertilization, etc., all kinds of knowledge. Then, teach these methods to the farmers. Relying on these studies and work, relying on these efforts, a large number of natural pastors have obtained natural feedback and gained the joy of the world. According to the statistics of Elder Tapros, since the use of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizers began to be promoted, the average advancement speed of nature priests has increased by an average of 10% compared to before the promotion. This is a 10th increase in speed. It's so comfortable. However, such an improvement alone cannot satisfy Elder Tapros, nor can it satisfy the royal family, nobles, or even the magicians. For the Nature Order, if the improvement speed can be faster, just faster. If it can be 50% faster, it is better, if it can be doubled, it is better. Look at that Nordmark pastor. That speed is simply nature's beloved child, loved by the world all the time. If everyone could advance at his speed, the natural order would soon have 5 legends, 6 legends, and 7 legends. The royal family and nobles were not satisfied either. Output only increased by 10%? Only a 20% increase? What's that enough? It's just enough to feed people in normal years. If you save a little, you won't starve to death in disaster years. To be full like this, to be full with a mixture of chaff and wild vegetables, or to be full to eat only black bread. I want to be able to fill my stomach without eating bran and wild vegetables. I want to be able to eat an egg every day. I want to be able to eat meat once a month. I'm sorry, don't even think about it. The produce of the land, if I want to feed enough warriors, if I want to double the number of knights, I'm sorry, I can't do it. The output of the land allows more farmers to leave the land and work in the city without causing a food crisis. Sorry, it can't be done. With the output of the land, I want to support one more literate person in the village. I want to double the number of people in the town who can study. I want to double the number of apprentices that the Mage Tower can accept every year. Sorry, I still can't do it. Arrive. If you want to achieve this, if you want to further develop the country, if you want to have more manpower, especially high-quality manpower, the fundamental way is to increase agricultural output. The practice of relying on the power of natural priests to grow crops and reserve food in a short period of time in the year without summer cannot be repeated. Even if the nature priests are willing to contribute, there will no longer be a demigod's divine crystal to provide them with spellcasting energy. Gretel spent a whole day flipping through page after page the research reports and research records sent from the nature religion. The Natural God Church happily compiled the information and handed it over, and at the same time sent someone over to try to persuade Greet to lead this research. What a great opportunity! Having such a leader who has repeatedly produced results means that he can guide and inspire a large number of natural pastors and enable a large number of natural pastors to grow quickly. Pastor Nordmark, over the years, how many of the researchers around me have advanced? The legend of light has advanced a few levels. Not to mention, Pastor Nordmark's research ideas and methods are different from those of them. People who follow him can learn a lot. Moreover, Pastor Nordmark's research can be funded separately from the royal family. It does not conflict with the funds currently received by the Natural Deism. In other words, there is an additional fund. The projects are given to you, the manpower is given to you, you ask. Gretel thus received a large amount of information, which was sorted into categories by the natural religion group, written in outline, and sent to them proactively and diligently. Even with the outline and summary, it took him a full day to finish reading the information. After reading it, I covered my head and thought. Regarding the use of chemical fertilizers, the mixed use of chemical fertilizers and farmyard manure, irrigation, etc., he could not do any better. Without petrochemicals, it would be difficult to reduce the cost of greenhouses and other things to a level that farmers can afford. The natural priests have also done a good job in raising seedlings indoors in order to shorten the growth period and increase crop yields, so there is no need for him to have a hand. Then, the only thing he can do is to breed superior seeds, or, to be more precise, breed superior seeds in terms of hybridization and genetic engineering. Anyway, he has as many microscopes and electron microscopes as he needs and tools for studying chromosomes. Chromosome shearing may be a bit difficult. For this, he may need to practice more meteor bursts to rub more diamonds with his hands. What's important is that the natural society has its own unique advantages in the selection and breeding of superior seeds. A variety's characteristics and yield can be quickly spawned using magic, so you can have a rough idea in advance. There is no need to work hard like in the agricultural college in his previous life. He had to plant for a year and several years. Finally, he planted the fruits until they were mature. He eagerly waited for those few fruits to be published and the fruits were picked and eaten. Suddenly, one, or even several, master's and doctoral degrees were postponed. The fruit picker can't be thrown into jail and convicted of theft. You've decided, let's go in this direction. Fortunately, he had already accumulated a lot of experience in chromosome research. Use it on this and see what better effect it can have. Greet set a research direction, wrote down a whole page of plans, and then worked hard to refine them. After completing the details, he was about to give it to the students to calculate personnel, budget, required materials and equipment, etc., when the pen tip suddenly stopped. By the way, there seems to be a way to get immediate results and increase production. Can I ask about their progress first? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1910. To increase agricultural output, increasing unit output is one aspect, and increasing raw materials is another aspect. Especially the raw materials. Agricultural fertilizers and composting technology are not available, and we only rely on the natural fertility of the land. God knows, we will be able to plant them until the year of the monkey and the month of the horse. As for animal husbandry, if there is so much green grass, it will be lush and green in the summer, but it will wither in the autumn, and the livestock will have nothing to eat in the winter. The result is that the livestock are starving and thin, or a batch must be slaughtered to survive the winter safely. In terms of livestock production, production cannot increase. So, how is the silage feed project going at the nature order? Greet asked casually. Anavia immediately started flipping through the information, pulled out a few copies, and sent them to Greet. I have been doing this and have achieved some results. The difficulty now is that forage is easy to rot, and the cost of anti-corrosion has not been reduced. Well, let me take a look. Greet flipped through it quickly. Turn it over and over again. It turns out it happened so early. In the ancient mythological era, in the era when the nature order had not yet been established, or had just begun to sprout. In the Black Continent, or in other words, in the south of the Sea of Tranquility, the locals have stored green grass and fed it to their livestock during the season when the grass is scarce. Later, this technology traveled across the ocean and spread to the Old World. The nature order discovered this technology and promoted it to every corner of the Old World. Later, when the age of mythology ended, humans worked together to drive the gods out of the world. After wars, the Holy Sea of Glory began to rule the continent. This technology was widely promoted in the Old Continent. However, there is no inheritance of the natural god religion. It only relies on those farmers. Some places have it and some places don't. It is scattered and intermittent. In the Kingdom of Kent, the Natural God Church has maintained the inheritance of this technology and promoted it everywhere. In recent years, in compliance with the research results of the Magic Council, they have also made considerable progress. For example, they measured the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium content of the feed before and after silage, pH, water content ratio, and various ingredient changes that can be imagined. For example, they designed a comparative experiment to measure the difference in meat and milk production of the same livestock eating silage from different methods. For another example, they found a variety of bacteria in silage. So where is it stuck now? Is it easy to rot? Can the anti-corrosion cost be reduced? Gretel flipped through the lab report. Really, why doesn't anyone write a review for these things? Next time you want to conduct new research, you must ask students to submit a review first. Let me see what method they use to preserve it. Well, as long as the weather is too hot, it will rot easily, so I added ice cubes to store it, or used running water to cool it down. Greet held his forehead. Whether it's digging an ice cellar or using running water to cool down the storage area, the costs are skyrocketing. You can do experiments without sparing any effort and use them to store Warcraft feed, or you can also increase the cost a bit. I want to extend it to thousands of households and farmers and herdsmen. These methods are on the wrong track from the beginning. Oh, do you turn over the grass frequently to dissipate heat? This method is very useful for composting, but it is not very reliable for silage. After flipping, it rots faster. Not to mention, during the flipping process, it suddenly rained or something. They found out the large number of bacteria that increased after the forage rotted, and at the same time used magical magic to kill the bacteria. This. Gretel raised his forehead again. Divine magic, divine magic. Even if sterilization spells are so popular that even first-level priests can use them, how many times can a first-level priest use sterilization spells in a day? It's not enough for people, and I want to use it for pasture. A single sterilization spell can cover a cubic meter of silage, which is good news. How many spells are needed to complete the sterilization? Besides, divine magic also comes at a cost, and the cost is quite high. And there is another problem with magical sterilization. After using magical sterilization, the forage will not rot anymore. The problem is that it will not continue to become soft and juicy, with a sweet and sour smell, palatability, and nutritional value. Improve. Fine. Gretel rubbed his forehead, then rubbed his forehead, and continued to rub his forehead. After kneading it several times, I began to write down the experimental directions. First, let them continue to isolate bacteria during the silage process of forage. Find out the changes in bacterial numbers and dominant species during normal storage, as well as the changes in bacterial numbers and dominant species after the forage rots. Anavia's vision went dark from the side. The top moves his mouth, the bottom runs and breaks his legs. The teacher's words, I don't know how many nature priests are behind it, trying to isolate and cultivate these bacteria. There is not just one kind of bacteria in a ball of rotten grass, just culture it. Under the microscope, they are densely packed. I don't know if there are dozens or hundreds of species. They need to be cultivated very patiently. The result of finding out a large number of bacteria after rotting forage was accomplished by a team of 10 people headed by Smith Kuiying, a level 15 nature priest near the royal capital, after 3 years of work. But well, the teacher alone isolated dozens of various types of germs and defined multiple sources of the plague. Since this project has a purpose, just put it out there and find someone to do it. After the comparison is made, simulate the conditions during the forage silage process, temperature, humidity, various conditions. Then, add various additives to see which additives can be effective. Anavia sighed again. Various additives, to put it lightly, there are so many additives. The various raw materials and products at the Alchemy Guild are uniformly numbered. Are they numbered in 5 or 6 digits? Teacher, do you have a general direction? Ah. Yes, Gretel was stunned for a moment. Mainly because it's cheap. The price of a ton of silage and additives is higher than. He scratched his head. You ask them to do a cost calculation. If the number is higher than the number, the farmers will definitely not be able to bear it, so don't mention it. Anyway, it will definitely not work if it is higher than 1 gold coin. I am not sure if it will be higher than 1 silver coin. You ask them to calculate. Anavia sighed and continued recording. Okay, one more thing. However, according to the standard, there are probably not many materials that can be selected. Lime is probably fine, as is plant ash. Sugar is definitely out of the question. Salt. Can the price of salt be lowered? So, teacher, what does it mean to be effective? Additives that promote the growth of normal bacteria, the bacteria that change the silage in a good direction and inhibit the growth of harmful bacteria. Gretel answered without hesitation. Anavia was silent. This requirement sounds simple, but it is not easy to implement. We must build a laboratory first, and we cannot fool around with walls made of earth or even vines. Speaking of meeting the teacher's requirements, can it be completed in 1 year? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1911. Chapter 1906 Greet, I am still a rice party, not a pasta party. The Archmage Nordmark has begun research. Gretel designated the topic, gave the idea, and sent the news to find someone to do it. Not only did it immediately spread among the nature order, but it also quickly spread to the royal capital. When the queen received the news, she finally breathed a long sigh of relief, with joy on her face. Unfortunately, it has been more than a month since she sent out her request. First, the Archmage Nordmark was not here, then he went out to play, and then he didn't want to be disturbed. After procrastinating and procrastinating, it was easy to get the right words, but it was bring me the information and show it to me. The distance between being willing to take action and taking action was probably as far away as the kingdom to the new world. Now that people have finally started working on it, does that mean that the next big projects will also be started bit by bit? Even if the kingdom's agricultural output can increase by 10%, it will be good. What's more, this person's shot is only a 10% increase. He may feel that it is too little and is not satisfied at all, and he still needs to continue studying. In contrast, if we allocate a piece of land in the wilderness, build a few cement houses, laboratories, with glass windows, and provide a few microscopes, is that considered an investment? That doesn't count at all. The Queen signed the warrant very simply and handed it to the female officer beside her. Let's allocate the private property under my name, Romford Manor, to Master Cooing as a research institute. When needed, we can transfer it from the manor. Houses, land, pasture, and tenant farmers who help cut grass, dig cellars, and build houses are all available. Priests of the nature order, if they want to conduct experiments with peace of mind, they do not need to do many menial and dirty tasks themselves. If you want to guide the tenant farmers, there are enough tenant farmers in this manor for the priests of the nature order to try. At least, it won't be necessary to search for people all over the land and find the tenants of other nobles. Near the royal capital, every inch of land is precious, and there is no free space. It is not occupied by nobles, churches, or magic councils, but belongs to some yeoman. Throwing this topic aside, Smith Cooing breathed a sigh of relief while having a splitting headache. Thinking about such a huge workload, he wished he could recruit 7 or 8 more disciples, and asked his disciples to recruit 7 or 8 more disciples each. Previously, he had been busy with more than 10 people in analyzing various bacteria for 3 years. At this moment, Pastor Nordmark came with a new request. He wanted to subdivide the bacteria again and try an unknown number of medicines. These tasks need to be completed within 3 months, or at most 6 months, in the laboratory. Then we can use the luxuriant weeds at the turn of summer and autumn to do real stockpiling and see if this method can be used in reality. He took a breath and began to give orders. John, go pick up 1,000 pounds of green grass, divide it into 1-pound portions, and then adjust the temperature and humidity of each storage box. Is teacher. John went away in tears. 1,000 pounds of fodder is nothing. 1 pound is 1 portion. This is a big project. And also adjust the temperature and humidity of each storage box. 1 by 1. Each time it takes 30 seconds, it will take 7 or 8 hours, don't even think about sleeping tonight. Angelina, Jennifer, please sort out the previous research results and select all the suspicious bacterial species found. Select at least 200 species. Is teacher. The 2 female students also went to work with grimaces. Oh my God, 200 strains. Under those microscopes, all kinds of bacteria, long and short, big and small, must be picked out one by one, and the eyes must be blinded. Moreover, the teacher is in a hurry and it is impossible to spend 3 to 5 days or 10 days to complete it slowly. I have to take time to apply it on my eyes again, I have to use the power of nature to moisturize my eyes again, it hurts. Smith Cooing noticed the expressions of his disciples and did not take them seriously. Next, he called 7 or 8 names. Nate, Fred, Edward, True. According to the strain selected by Angelina and Jennifer, every 5 servings of forage will specifically promote the growth of one type of bacteria. Do not overstimulate the fermentation, allow time for it to grow naturally, and complete the entire fermentation process within 5 days. Yes. 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 A group of disciples dispersed to work. It is not difficult to promote bacteria, but it is too difficult to promote them and allow time for natural growth. A shake of the hand revealed that the fermentation was too little. Not to mention 5 days, 15 days would not ferment to the extent of a whole autumn and winter. If you shake your hands, it will induce too much fermentation, and it may be too different from the normal fermentation process. It is certainly not difficult for people like them, the lowest is level 5, the highest is level 11, to do this, but for the disciples they lead, it is too difficult. Knock, bump, bump, bump. One fermentation cycle takes 5 days, including experimental preparations, and one cycle takes 6 days. A month later, Greet got the experimental report, glanced at it and started to sigh. Pay attention to the bacteria that produce benign effects. It may not be a single strain, but a group of bacteria composed of a large group of bacteria. He moved his pen as fast as he could and wrote the reply like this. Although he basically didn't understand silage, after silage was stored for a period of time, it would become sour, sweet, and juicy, so he remembered something called lactic acid bacteria. As for lactic acid bacteria, even if he didn't understand anything, he still knew that there was something called lactic acid bacteria. It can regulate intestinal flora and improve gastrointestinal function, blah blah blah. Just write it down now and let them struggle with the flora. When Smith Cooing saw the reply, his eyes darkened. Testing bacteria one by one is already a big project. An unknown number of bacterial species make up a bacterial colony, let alone how many permutations and combinations there are. How long will it take to study this way? Let alone half a year, 1 year, 2 years, can we produce results? Gretel didn't know how his vision went dark. In his opinion, he has already pointed out the bacteria composed of similar strains of bacteria. Isn't it very simple to pick out all the things that look similar and spawn them together? And he has more important things to do now. Wheat, oats, soybeans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn. Gretel was lying on the table, struggling with various crops. Which crop should you start with? In other words, which crop is he personally leading the research on? Wheat is said to be the most important food, but in terms of yield, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn are the three treasures. If you want to increase production, start with these three treasures to feed a country's people faster. Although soybeans are inferior, they can extract oil and fertilize fields. The yield of oats is not great, but it is good for feeding horses. But I still want to study rice. Gretel put his head in his hands, leaned down on the table, and groaned loudly. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1912. All good food is nostalgia. Poor Gretel, who has traveled through time for decades and still can't forget the taste of his previous life. He grew up in the middle reaches of the Yangtze River. Although he also eats pasta every day, he still mainly eats rice. When I travel to this world, what I eat every day is wheat, wheat, wheat. It mainly focuses on bread, so if you want to eat noodles, you have to make your own, or try your luck to find Italian pasta. As for if you want to eat a steamed bun or something, that's even more embarrassing, just knead it yourself. What? Rice? There is rice in this world. It is said that it came from the far, far away east, which is countless times farther than the Orc kingdom. It was also passed along with a few specialties such as tea and silk. However, it has been said that the kingdom of Kent is located in the north, and there is not enough light and heat. Although the latitude may be similar to that of the three northeastern provinces, rice cannot be grown at all, let alone tea trees. If magicians want to make a tooth sacrifice, they must either import it or ask the priests of the nature order to cast spells to induce it. Well, it must be, the nature priests still have a way of setting up greenhouses, although they mostly use greenhouses to grow herbs. This thing cannot be used as a staple food in the kingdom of Kent. Greet also understands this truth. If you take other people's project funds, you can certainly get some private goods, but it's not easy to overdo it. It is not difficult to start a small project team and give it a try. He can even build a greenhouse to grow rice for his own consumption. With his current financial resources, he can more than feed the entire Mage Tower. However, it is still not possible to focus one's energy on cultivating rice. Gretel felt his conscience and had no choice but to choose wheat as the target of research among staple foods such as wheat, oats, and corn, as well as supplementary foods such as sweet potatoes and potatoes. Feeding people's stomachs to the maximum extent is the most important thing. When it comes to research direction, Gretel is even more confused. Unfortunately, the university he attended in his previous life, although it was a 985 comprehensive university, did not have an agricultural college. There used to be some, before liberation, but later the departments were split up and assigned to the next door. Therefore, even if Gretel listened to lectures, listened to the chats of classmates in the next department, or listened to classmates bragging during the big class, he would not hear a single word. When it comes to how to increase wheat production, he has only heard about Mr. Un's deeds, and he probably knows a few terms: hybridization, selection, and breeding. Resistant to pests, diseases, lodging, salt, and alkali. And genetically modified. Oh, there are also improved irrigation, improved farm tools, improved planting methods, etc. By the way, how far has the nature order achieved in this regard? Gretel could only endure it and read the information bit by bit. The result of the review is that the improvement of agricultural tools has been done very well, at least the nature order has iterated to the point where it can no longer be iterated, but promotion is a problem. For water conservancy and irrigation, they also figured out the most appropriate amount of water supply. However, whether the water conservancy facilities in each manor and noble territory are well constructed and whether the water supply can be supplied as required is another matter. Water conservancy projects are a big deal. If the landowners don't do it themselves and the nobles don't do it themselves, we can't all rely on the religious orders. Planting methods, etc., such as how high the ridges should be, what the spacing between ridges should be, planting density, planting depth, when to apply fertilizer, how much fertilizer to apply. For these things, the nature religion has also figured out effective solutions. As a result, in the core area of the religious sect, the wheat grown exactly according to their method can easily produce more than 20% higher yield per mu than the average outside world. But, still the same problem. Promotion, promotion, promotion again. I want to promote it on a large scale, and I want every piece of wheat growing land in the kingdom, every manor in the name of aristocrats and wealthy businessmen, and every yeoman farmer to grow wheat in the most accurate and meticulous way. Greed thought on his knees and knew that this task would be impossible to complete relying on the nature order. For example, in the entire city of Heartland, there are only 5, 6, or 7 or 8 nature priests, and one agricultural technician in each village cannot do this. Not to mention, these nature priests also have to cover the tasks of treatment, research, and maintenance of nature. Let the upper echelons of the religious order contact the royal family, and let the royal family find its own way. Integrate the nobles themselves, and find ways to promote it. They want to increase production, so let them find their own people. Gretel started writing without thinking. Agricultural technicians, etc., whether they are trained from old farmers, from village leaders, or from aristocratic children who have read a little bit, they must find a way to adapt to local conditions. Get a group of people out, send them to the nature religion for training, and then spread them throughout the country. By the way, it would be best to give the nature order another budget and let them train more priests. The more natural priests there are, the more beneficial it will be to the basic strength of the entire kingdom, right? After finishing the promotion matters, Greed can then move on to breeding. It is said that the nature order has also spent a lot of effort on breeding. Whether you choose the plumpest ears of wheat and save seeds every year. Before sowing every year, use flotation to select seeds. Or use various spells to enhance the strength of the seeds. The nature order has thought of every possible way. The most illegal thing is that the natural society has a particularly unreasonable method when engaging in selective breeding. They can negotiate directly with the crops. Yes, discuss directly with the crop. Gretel had seen Elderwood squatting on the edge of the field, pressing his hands on the ground, the power of nature filling the fields, and muttering to himself. Grow stronger, don't fall so easily, don't fall when the wind blows. Work harder and get more wheat grains on one ear. It's best to have 40, 50 grains. The ears of wheat can absorb more nutrients, and grow stronger. The weight of a single grain of wheat is a bit heavier. In this way, the pastors of the Nature Church have selected and bred wheat that is resistant to lodging, wheat with many grains per plant, and wheat with heavy grains per plant. Although the genetic characteristics of these wheat are not stable, sometimes they can be inherited, sometimes they cannot be inherited, and the pastors can't figure out why these things cannot be inherited. However, if the agriculturists in the previous life had this ability to use divine magic to directional growth, directional breeding, etc., they would probably laugh even in their dreams. So what else can I do? Select the wheat with the best traits and keep them genetically stable. Decided, let's do this. Gretel jumped into action. Between his brows and eyes, he was full of energy and gave an order. Let the cult bring up the best wheat and the best grains. Then, prepare the manpower. Let's do a genetic test first. The last 3 days. The last 3 days. Everyone, hurry up and vote for cats. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1913. Greet basically knows nothing about agriculture. He knew that production could be increased by improving agricultural tools, water conservancy, planting methods, breeding, fertilizers and compost. As for how much production can be increased, he is relatively confused. Probably, can it grow by 10%? Or 20%? This number is clearly insufficient. Gretel knew without calculation that in industrial society, the urban population exceeded the rural population, or at least was equal to the rural population. If we say that at present, about 2/3 or even 3/4 of the population make a living from farming, to upgrade to an industrial society, agricultural productivity must at least double. If you include spellcasters, warriors, and all kinds of monsters raised, there is a huge demand for meat, monster meat, and magic plants. Doubling the productivity may not be enough. Doubling the farmland must be cultivated, and the output of meat must also be at least double. Gretel did not know that in the world he came from, Britain had firmly entered the industrial society through these non-supernatural means alone. In other words, there is no need for him to conduct research at all. As long as there is an organizer who is determined enough and a group of leaders who are enlightened enough, agricultural productivity can be improved to a sufficient level through long-term efforts. If only he knew. If he knew, he wouldn't interfere. Greet thought on his knees that it would be impossible for him to promote agricultural tools, water conservancy, and planting methods. Not to mention, improving these gadgets and improving productivity will inevitably lead to huge changes in production relations. To stimulate the improvement of production relations related to the improvement of agricultural technology, if it can be given extraordinary professional feedback, the promotion from an agricultural society to an industrial society may be enough to turn a small farmer into a legend. Where does Gretel have that new world time? The kind of work that involves coordinating the work of the royal family, nobles, and other extraordinary forces, as well as farmers, homesteaders, and tenant farmers, regulates food price fluctuations, absorbs the labor force squeezed out by agricultural production, and at the same time does not cause huge social turmoil. Firstly, he is not good at this kind of work. Secondly, even if he is good at it, it will take 50 years or 100 years. Whoever wants to do it should do it. Greet himself can just bury himself in the laboratory. On the operating table in front of him, a row of test tubes were laid out leisurely. Each test tube is thick and strong, at least 500 ml, and contains more than half of the wheat seeds. There are small labels on the walls of the test tubes. From Hampshire, from Suffolk, from Hertfordshire, common wheat, high-yield wheat, multi-ear wheat, multi-grain wheat, lodging-resistant wheat, pest-resistant wheat. Greet took a deep breath, turned around and walked out. Behind him, the lids of the test tubes jumped up automatically one by one. A few wheat grains flew out of each test tube and were spread flat on the floating saucer. At the same time, a ray of light was also cast from the top of the laboratory, writing on the record book. Make a copy of each label and affix it to the corresponding location on the floating dish. Gretel walked out with his hands empty-handed and walked to the specially flattened greenhouse land. With a flick of his finger, all the wheat seeds flew up and fell into the soil. Greet just stood still, the power of nature filled his body, and naturally buds sprouted from the soil, rising up from the ground and growing vigorously. Tillering, jointing, heading, filling, maturing, and producing full-grained golden wheat. Then, the invisible servants swarmed up, sorted the wheat into different categories, measured the height of the wheat, counted the number of wheat ears, the number of wheat grains, weighed, took the soil, measured the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium content in the soil, and compared it with the previous values. Gretel just wanted to see the wheat with his own eyes and feel their properties. Seeing is believing. Only after seeing it for yourself can you know whether the wheat is tall or short, whether it is thick or thin, whether it has 6 ears or 8 ears, how many grains of wheat are in each ear, and how big each grain of wheat is. As for cold resistance, salt-alkali resistance, resistance to diseases and insect pests, etc., they cannot be seen with the naked eye, and must be studied carefully. However, having seen this was enough. Greet returned to the laboratory and, with a single order, retrieved the chromosome maps and comparative data of these wheat species. After looking around for a long time, he screamed, "Why are there so many differences? How many chromosome points are there in wheat? There are so many, so many. In a tiny grain of wheat, or to be more specific, in the germ part of the wheat, there are so many 42 chromosomes crowded in the nucleus. This thing is hexaploid. Hexaploid? If Greet's team hadn't had experience in studying dragon genes, they would have stopped wanting to do it when they saw this huge mess. At present, we are working steadily, processing these wheat grains one by one, scanning them one by one with a microscope, and comparing them one by one with tailing analysis. If you find a difference, mark the difference. Obviously, the differences in the chromosomes of the wheat grains that Greet now masters have exceeded the scope of what he could imagine. In the same multi-ear wheat, the difference between chromosome points is not 3 to 5, nor 10, or 8. Moreover, Gretel's previous research on dragon chromosomes was a coincidence. There were dragon-born creatures that had undergone dragon genetic modification as a comparison. What is placed in front of Gretel now is all ordinary wheat, not even magic plants, and there is no special spell fluctuation at all. Which point means growing stronger, which point means growing more ears, which point makes it grow taller, which point makes the plant dwarf. Greet had no clue, not even a template to compare with. Not to mention, there is a high probability that one point contains 17 or 80, or even 70 or 80 DNA fragments, and who knows how many sequences composed of certain purine and certain pyrimidine. In the group that my senior sister led before, there was a branch that specialized in studying the atomic sequence of chromosomes. It's just that this task is too difficult, and no satisfactory results have been obtained yet. If we expect them, we might as well rely on ourselves and work hard. Greet let out a long sigh and grabbed a handful of wheat seeds labeled multi-ear wheat. Count out one grain, bury it in the soil, input the power of nature, and start to recite silently. A certain chromosome, a specific point is removed, and then it grows, germinates, blooms and bears fruit rapidly. No response. It seems that after cutting off a certain point, the seeds cannot grow. Okay, one more. This time, when Gretel input the power of nature, he changed his mind. A certain chromosome, a specific point does not work, and then grows rapidly. Still no response. So, if this point does not work, the wheat may still not grow. Another way. Please give me a monthly ticket, meow 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 meow. It's the end of the month, and everyone's monthly votes are about to expire. Hurry up and vote for Gretel. Let monthly tickets sprout. The paper The Cat read shows that in Britain, from the second half of the 18th century to the first half of the 19th century, wheat yield per acre increased by 79%. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1914. Gray's first reaction was to subconsciously think. Otherwise, use limited wish technique and forget it. With one limited wish technique, you can get a batch of, or even one, wheat seeds with high yield, multiple ears, resistance to lodging, resistance to pests and diseases, salt-alkali tolerance, cold resistance. The traits can be inherited from generation to generation. How wonderful! What a convenient research path. However, Gretel gave up this idea before he reached into his pocket to touch the diamond. Limited wish technique. This thing is convenient for doing research, but it has endless consequences. Even if it is not the genuine great wishing technique, limited wishing technique will still give feedback with many results of just tell me whether it has been achieved when the restrictions are not sufficient and the path is not given. For example, wheat seeds are actually wheat seeds, but from grassy wheat seeds, they are twisted into woody wheat seeds. The dream of enjoying the cool under the grass has come true, but if a wheat plant dares to occupy 1 square meter, it will take what's it for? For another example, the wheat seeds are indeed wheat seeds, and they are not twisted into strange shapes. However, the requirements for fertilizers suddenly turned upside down, and they became meat-eating. With such wheat seeds, growers are not only blinded, but also blinded. For another example, wheat is a wheat seed, it has not turned into a tree, and it does not need to eat meat. However, its requirements for light and temperature have instantly become side by side with rice, and it cannot be grown in the kingdom of Kent. Surprised or not? Is it surprising? Yes, these are the pits that the natural order, the magic council, and other spellcasters have stepped on. They have stepped on ordinary crops, on magic plants, on animals, and on monsters. Therefore, when Greet came up with this topic, he received repeated warnings from Elder Tapros, from the natural pastor who joined the research group, and from the records of previous generations. Don't use limited wishing unless absolutely necessary. Gotta, let's continue researching. Life is not easy, Gretel sighed. Greet sighed and began to assign tasks. Each type of seed is assigned 2 natural priests. According to the difference between the chromosome points of the basic model and the improved model, use the power of nature to intervene and check one by one to find out which point is particularly useful. Give birth once, test again, give birth again, test again. That. Anavia held the plan given by the teacher with hesitation on her face. Teacher, what if this method doesn't work? For example, the power of nature cannot be so delicate and cannot pinch out a specific point. For example, wheat has no wisdom. If you tell it which point does not work, it will not work. Can't understand. Well, that's also possible. Greet nodded calmly. Of course, various problems may arise in every research direction. Even in the previous life, various gene cutting methods were used, and the wrong gene was cut, the gene was missed, the gene was cut too much, the gene was cut off, and it could not be put together. All kinds of problems still emerged one after another. That still means you know a lot about genes. Now, we haven't figured out anything about purines, pyrimidines, gene sequencing, or fluorescent probes, so we just want to perform surgery on chromosomes. It can only be said that failure is normal and success is accidental. Everyone, Get to work. Missions were dispatched in a hurry, and Greed began to contact Senior Sister Philby again. Senior Sister, when you were on Long Island, you took my research budget and started a group to study chromosomes. What are the results now? Don't let me go back to Nevis and you will become a legend, so no one will care about this project team. After taking my things, you have to get some results for me. I'm sorry, Philby Legend is in Sky Dragon City and will contact you later. I'm sorry, Philby Legend is outside the world barrier. I will contact you later. I'm sorry, Philby Legend is in battle and will contact you later. Gretel's communication needs jumped from Dragon Island to Sky Dragon City, and then from Sky Dragon City to the semi-permanent base built on the meteorite outside the world barrier. Every time I contacted, the other person's tone was very good, and progress was made every time. However, every time I contacted, I couldn't find the person. When will Senior Sister come back? Wait a minute, how many days has Senior Sister been out fighting? Generally speaking, it takes about 1 month to 2 months for a round of battle. It has only been 7 days since Philby Legend went out for this battle, and it will take a long time to come back. Well, be it teachers or Senior Sisters, they are all fighting hard in Sky Dragon City. Especially the Senior Sister, maybe she plans to take advantage of the invasion of foreign enemies to work hard to improve her combat proficiency and contribution points, and then reach the second level of the legend in one go and then come back. Philby did have such an idea. How wonderful it is to be in Sky Dragon City. There are enough enemies to fight, and enough targets to try her hand at. She can hone her newly acquired skills after advancing to legend, and she can test legendary spells on them. There are people, no, the Dragon Clan, who will reimburse all fighting expenses. There are rewards to be had. There are also all kinds of extraterrestrial materials, so you can grab some. What's more important is that outside the world barrier, you can get a large number of enemy remains, and you can do a lot of experiments. That thing named semiconductor has very special physical properties. She is curious. There are also experiments on the photoelectric effect. There is a story about conducting experiments at a meteorite base outside the world barrier. For some reason, the interference is extremely small, and the possibility of experimental results is extremely high. If it weren't for the fact that only legends could stay outside the world barrier so that they could escape easily if something went wrong, she would have liked to move the entire Mage Tower and all the magicians under her to work here. Philby fought happily and did research happily. As for using mental power to scan chromosomes and figure out the atomic sequence inside, at least, figure out the molecular sequence inside. This research may be interesting, but it is not particularly important to her who has become a legend. So, just let the students and lower-level magicians do it, right? When will you be able to produce results? This project is what little Gretel wants. Speed it up. If it doesn't work, use mental power to scan. By the way, exercise your mental power. Philby gave this order to her magicians. As for the magicians she brought here, if they don't get results, they can only stay trapped on Dragon Island and continue doing it for a day, 2 days, a year, or 2. Is there any way that I can see these chromosomes? Scanning directly with mental power is too painful. A young magician finished 10 sets of electrophoresis today, rubbing his brow and humming in pain. Depressed, he picked up various reagents from the side and poured them in one by one. Darius, you're crazy. Stop it. These magic potions are very valuable. 1/10 of our laboratory's budget is spent here. It takes a month to ship it. Once it's finished, it's gone. It's the end of the month. Please vote for me. The monthly pass will expire in 2 days. If you still have a monthly pass on hand, give it to the cat as soon as possible. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1915. Darius couldn't stand it anymore. He has been on Long Island for 5 years. 5 years. From the age of 28 to 33, in 5 years, I was a level 9 mage when I came here, and I am still a level 9 mage now. Yes, it's that sad. The magicians of the same period, the magicians who came here with them, have generally been promoted 1 to 2 levels, but their group has made no progress. Repeating the exact same job every day. Boil the kelp, boil the kelp, boil the kelp, toss the cells, toss the cells, toss the cells, poke with the electrode, poke with the electrode, poke with the electrode. The above requirements are, find a simpler method, a clearer method, and a more detailed interpretation of chromosomes. They spent 5 years trying to find out just this one. If we haven't found it for 5 years, there will be no progress for 5 years. Without progress, there is no possibility of advancement. Of course, you can also advance by relying on your own research and meditation in your spare time, but the speed is. Darius was very motivated in the first year, worked hard in the second year, and felt dizzy in the third year. In the fourth year, I tried every means to transfer back to Nevis, but to no avail. He is the direct disciple of Phil by legend. He wants to be transferred after 4 years without any results. Will he still hang out in the future? After another year, his spirit was suppressed to the limit and he finally collapsed. Mental power was flying wildly in the laboratory, and the corks of bottles of reagents popped open, and colorful water droplets flew out and poured down. My colleagues shouted a few times and then stopped. Darius went berserk, and he went berserk in a measured manner. He didn't pour out all the reagents, he just took a little from each bottle and poured them one by one. Pour it into every experimental box, pour it into every pot for cooking chromosomes, pour it into every vessel. It doesn't consume many reagents, and it's essentially an experiment, so let him do whatever he wants. Pour the reagent here, remember to cover it there, don't destroy the reagent. So what if everyone's work today is filled with various reagents? The research progress is nothing more than a day's delay. Everyone works in Longdeo, going from the laboratory to the dormitory, and then from the dormitory to the laboratory every day. There is no shopping, no bar hopping, no opera, no girls from the custom street, and of course no men from the custom street. Even for food, there are only standard meals cooked by tailing, or various large meats cooked by barbarians with rough hands. For 6 months a year, there is white snow and howling wind. The sun rises at 9 o'clock every morning and sets at 3 o'clock. There is a time when everyone can't bear it anymore, a time when everyone goes berserk. We are all colleagues in the laboratory, so we all have to bear with each other and protect each other. It's just that you can pour concentrated sulfuric acid, concentrated hydrochloric acid, caustic soda, etc., as you please. People sometimes get irritated, so they just pour it randomly anyway. But how did you think of adding these things to the gel, including greenthorn sea snake extract, jellyfish juice, sea snail fluorescein, and angler lantern extract? It's completely irrelevant. Darius raged for half an hour and finally calmed down. Colleagues swarmed over him, threw mechanized mind at him, flew out the hands of various mages, and pinned him down on the chair next to him. Then, each one muttered, picked up the various experimental dishes that were messed up, and continued working. Now that we have finished pouring, let's test it again. What if there are any surprises? Nothing was made. Nothing was made that was supposed to be made. The black snake root extract interfered with the gel so much that they couldn't form. It's the same here. I didn't make anything. I added everything, nitroglycerin. He didn't add any explosion. I'm so lucky. I am here too. The magicians complained softly, doing experiments, and cleaning up the reaction vessels that were messed up by these messy reagents. When the same two reagents are mixed together, they probably know how to clean them up so as not to cause strange reactions. 70, 80, or even more reagents, mixed together, will it explode, will strange things float away, and will everyone in the room be knocked down? They have no idea. Since there is no bottom, we must deal with it one by one and neutralize one by one. The voices of the magicians soon became quieter, and one by one they concentrated on their work and began to work. Most experiments are impossible to produce results, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, after 5 years of experimentation, nothing special came out. Since electrophoresis was used to generate various bands, their job was to measure various organisms, band by band, and record them. If you want to go further, if you want to be more delicate, no way. As for Phil by Legend's request, go exercise your mental strength. Go exercise. Use your mental power to sense and touch every molecule. When I reached level 16, I was able to sense electrons with my mental power. Can't you even sense atoms? Even if atoms cannot sense it, what about the ones that are several times or dozens of times larger than atoms? Molecules can always sense it. In response to such a request, these magicians, who were at the highest level of 15 or 16 and the lowest level of 9 or 10, could only cry bitterly one by one. Boss, this is why you are a legend and we are still struggling down there. Besides, before the Parliament demonstrated the existence of atoms, had anyone really sensed atoms with their mental power? There are really people who use their mental power to seize atoms one after another, seize them, analyze them, and then submit their own research reports. This is one kind of atom, that is another kind of atom, and in what form this atom and that atom are put together to form a certain kind of molecule. No. Can you blame us? The mental power of middle and low-level mages can really be so delicate. Thinking like this and complaining, a surprised call suddenly sounded in the laboratory. Huh? What's wrong? What's the matter? Weak inquiries sounded from every corner of the laboratory. Darius buried his head on the experimental table and became silent again. He opened his eyes wide and stared at the scene in front of him. The floating strips in the gel showed a faint fluorescence under the illumination of ultraviolet light. Moreover, they are different colors of fluorescence. I feel like, I might actually be able to make something that I need. With a flash, magicians crowded in front of his experimental table from all directions. The tall ones stretched their heads to look, and the short ones floated themselves to see. The ones who squeezed in were too slow and couldn't get a seat while floating, so they simply flew out of the secret eye. What did you just add to this? I can't remember right now. It's the end of the month. It's the last day. Everyone, hurry up and throw your monthly tickets to the cat.